Welcome back to another episode of Who Judges the Judge, the podcast intended to make you consider the way you judge the world around you. And today I have an incredible guest, Leora Shemesh. If you are not familiar with her, you should Google her. She is one of the best criminal defense lawyers I know. And I'm not saying that only because she's my cousin and only because we practice law together. And only because next of kin, power of attorney. No, she's amazing and her story is incredible. Thank you so much for being on the show and for making the time.
Thank you so much. I love you so much.
I love you too. How long have you been practicing law for now? I know you got a few years on me.
Yeah,
which I remind you as often as I possibly can.
Yes, you do. 25 years. 25 years in January. Yeah,
it's been a long time.
Of practice.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Stop it.
You also have a small boutique firm. We've been sharing space since I left, which will be 10 years in February that we've been practicing together, which is pretty crazy. You do everything and everything, though. You'll do an impaired driving and sex assault and run the whole gamut, but primarily drugs and homicides more recently.
Yeah, well, more recently, I'm doing more sex assaults.
Right.
Yes, so more high-profile sex assaults.
Yes.
But ordinarily, it's been a heavy drug-based clientele, and that led into a lot of homicides. And I have done it all. But it's been a whirlwind of a practice for sure.
I know it really has. I'm going to jump right into sort of the pinnacle of what makes your story so unique, because aside from obviously, a trailblazing legal career, before you were struck in a situation that you had to contend with in your practice and in your life was like pretty comfortable for you. Very comfortable childhood. Raised by mom and dad together, who are still together in this beautiful relationship. You've got 2 siblings, got married sort of when you were supposed to, as you were supposed to an incredible man, 2 kids. Like life was sort of, there was challenges, but it was pretty easy.
There weren't a lot of bumps in the road. I was thinking about that as I was making my way downtown to be here for this. I was thinking about how charmed my life really was.
Right.
And how perfect it really was. And I see it that way. And I'm not shy about admitting that I had, love and support and a very warm home all the time, very supported by family and extended friends and extended family members. Life was going the way that I had planned it out in my head. Maybe I wanted more kids, but I had the 2. I had some issues with infertility with the first one. But, by comparison to a lot of people, I had a very charmed life and still do, quite frankly. But then, I was struck with...
But then you had the rug pulled out under you.
Yes, I did. My practice had been going along really well. I had been an associate at a law firm for about 7 years, and then I went out on my own after my second kid, and life really was great. I was making good money and the practice was growing, and I was progressing as a lawyer and becoming more confident and comfortable on my feet and in my skin. And then, I got hit in the face and in the gut really hard.
And some people are very familiar with the story. I think many aren't. But if you're not, in the middle of living this, as you call it, charmed life, beautiful family, extended family, incredibly successful, lucrative practice, you get charged criminally.
So I had been working pretty intensely in Brampton, so in Peel region. And I had been going up against the same sort of drug officers repeatedly, cross-examining them daily, becoming more agitated by the lying and the deception and the cheating. I was winning cases. So through all the lying and the cheating, I was still managing to be quite successful for my clients. And then one particular case really took a turn on me. Same officers, they had already been called out. 5 of the officers were under investigation. We were now on Act 2 with the same officers, and there had been an allegation that they had stolen monies through really a tactic or strategy that I employed that I thought was valid and decent and legal at the time, which was I walked into a room with a Crown attorney and reminded him that his officers were lying and they had stolen money right out of the safe belonging to a client of mine. And I said to him, nowadays people have nanny cams. Not suggesting that I had the nanny cam, but certainly putting it out there in the ether that people have nanny cams. And as a result, they may have been captured on a video. So, hey, go back and speak to your police officers and find out if they stole the money.
Right.
Which I thought he was going to go do, which he did do, but he was a former police officer himself and he took it very personally. So he went into the room with his officer and his officer, I guess, told him, yeah, I took the money.
And how much money are we talking about? Do you remember?
Well, I mean, everybody's figure is a little bit different, but, I think their figure is 20,000. The client's figures are 20,000. I think the officer's figure is 2. Okay. But, somewhere in the range of about $20,000 in cash in a safe that had watches, rings, and other jewelry. They weren't interested in that. They were interested in the cash, and that's what they took. So fast forward, he asked for an adjournment. He didn't want to put his officer in the stand. And I was jumping up and down saying, put him in the stand, let me at him. And he says no. And they began to circle the wagons and protect these officers. And lo and behold, the trial got derailed. And while it was being derailed, life sort of carried on for me and my practice. Until one day I find out that I'm being investigated. And investigated because the rumor mill began to run through that courthouse that I had a nanny cam video, which I never had, nor did I ever suggest for a moment that I had one. But I still had further cases with these officers.
You just laid the seeds that maybe this existed. Maybe I've got these cops who you had previously caught lying.
Right.
On camera stealing money that your client told you they had in fact stolen.
Correct.
And it really was just pushing the buttons to see if they would admit to doing what you believed they had already done.
Correct. So I did have...
What happened with that case? Did the charge get withdrawn?
Yeah, no.
When you said it got derailed, what does that mean for people?
So it got stayed. So the charges were essentially dealt with and everyone was free to go their merry way. But I still had further cases.
To the success of your client, we should add, yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And so I still had further cases with this officer who was still, I'm sure, not sleeping comfortably at night thinking, holy moly, what does she have?
Right.
And so I let him think that, nor did I think it was my obligation to tell him I didn't have anything. So then I started getting requests, though, from other lawyers. Hey, can you send me your video? Hey. And so I kept saying, I can't confirm or deny whether I have something.
Right.
Now, what I did have was actual statements from witnesses who actually did observe him stealing the money out of the safe. I did have that. That was true. But I wasn't prepared to give that up either. My position was, you should come clean. If you've taken this money, you should come clean. And this threat of me having something, I thought might force them to come clean, but all it did was further the protection that the Crown's office was providing them. And so they began to suggest that my client's wife was, someone who was giving information to the police. And in order to entice her to do that, they took the money out of the safe and then returned it to her as a form of enticement to her. Anyway, they came up with this lavish...
So they tried to suggest that they took the money to bribe your client's wife to speak against your client and then gave her the money back, which never happened.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, fast forward, I find out I'm being investigated for this because they're now of the view that I've done something wrong. And one particular lawyer that I used to work for 7 years, who is now a judge, decided to contact me and ask me for the video. And I gave him the same story that I've given to multiple other lawyers, which was, I cannot confirm or deny whether or not I have something. I'm still in the middle of litigation with these officers, and I can't help you. I'm so sorry. And he took that very personally, and he tried to subpoena me and whatever I did have to court. And now it was becoming more of a real issue in the courthouse, at the very courthouse that I was working in and day out. And so I felt like I had to hire a lawyer. So now I'm calling up lawyers to now represent me on coming to court with something in my file, which I do have, but it's not a video. And so I get subpoenaed to the very courtroom and courthouse that I'm customarily appearing in. And now they want me to take the stand. And at this stage, I have to come clean because so much has gone on, the rumor mill, the lawyers, other lawyers, and now I feel like I have to come clean. And so I do. I take the stand and I testify that I never had a video. And people began to really whiz around that courtroom like the planet had fallen. And so, sure enough, following that, I am criminally charged with perjury because they feel as though I've lied under oath about having this video or claiming that I had it and then testifying that I didn't have it.
But when would you have claimed under oath that you had it if that was the first time you're testifying?
So that's very interesting. So people are now saying that I've told other people this. So other people had testified and that I had said so during a meeting, a private meeting with a judge who was the very judge who was sitting in the courtroom that I'm about to now get into the stand for. So it just became so complicated, unnecessarily so, when what really should have happened is the Crown should have come clean and said, okay, we admit he's taken the money. All of this is moot. Let's just all go home. But instead, what they did was they turned the tables on me in order, I say, to protect the police officer and the administration at large because he was a member of a drug unit that was so prevalent in the courthouse. So there were so many cases that relied on this officer for the Crown. So anyway, I was charged criminally.
And what year was this?
Oh, it was 5 years ago. So what are we in? 20?
No, it's been longer than that. It's been 6 years since
Sorry,
your charges
5
were
years.
withdrawn.
5 years since the charges have been drawn, and I was sorry. You're right, and I was 3 years under the gun. So 8 years ago.
And it's been 6 years since your charges were withdrawn.
Correct.
In June.
In June.
It was 6 years.
Yes.
And then 3 years. So 9 years ago.
9 years.
So you're at the height of your drug practice.
Totally.
And for anyone familiar with that world, the unit you were taking on was called the Peel 5. Everyone knew them. Everyone knew them to be a very, very dirty faction of the Peel Regional Police.
Yeah.
So it wasn't surprising to anyone that they had stolen money. It was surprising that they had gotten caught and had admitted to it to the point that these charges were being stayed. And so you're
sorry, let me just
arrested.
interrupt because
Yes.
there were so many other occasions where, as you know, clients were coming to us and saying, they took my money, they took
All
my
the
money
time.
all the time on traffic stops and in their house and at storage lockers, like money was gone, or they would claim that like half the money was there when we know that, you know, there was a much larger amount of money in place. So it wasn't a surprise to me that she came to me and said, I watched him take the money out. She could describe it. She knew what pocket he put it in and how he put the money in his pocket. I mean, it was very clear to me it was done. And so I felt confident in going to the Crown Attorney and suggesting it the way that I did. But this wasn't the first time that as lawyers, all of us had heard these allegations. It was on a daily basis.
Yeah, it was very prevalent at the time, for sure.
Yeah.
And when you made these comments to the Crown Attorney, you weren't under oath, that you didn't provide an affidavit. There was nothing that was requiring you to tell the truth necessarily. And so this suggestion that there might exist that video to then form the basis of a perjury charge came out of left field for all of us. I mean,
yeah, I was in a courtroom.
You certainly poked to the bear, and we expected some, flack for that. And we knew that wasn't going to go completely unscathed. But the extent to which the police force and the Crown Attorney's Office generally responded against you was shocking.
It really was gut-wrenching. I mean, I remember where I was in the Peel courthouse at the time, and a colleague of mine had already been arrested in her gowns just a few weeks before that. And I remember getting calls from people saying, is it you? Is it you? And I said, no, it's actually not me. It's somebody else. Very similar name, Laura, but not Leora. But it was shocking that I was in the middle of a court case and I get a call from my lawyer saying, no, they're charging. You need to stop what you're doing and get out of that courthouse. Because the fear was they were going to be waiting for me to arrest me in the very courthouse that I was in, which thankfully, I always say Laura kind of took the pound of flesh before me, and they had sort of been taken to task for arresting her in her gowns. And so I don't think they chose to do that with me because of sort of the fear that the media had already been onto this for her. So, I left the courthouse that day, walking to my car, concerned, looking left and right that they were going to pop out of the bushes and kind of, jump me and prone me to the ground and put the handcuffs on. But no, that didn't happen. And it was done, I guess more civilly than that. It was done in my a law office where I had to just sign some paperwork. But the whole notion of being a defense lawyer and getting my photographs and fingerprints done was, I was nauseous that day. I actually couldn't believe what I was doing, that I was having to park at the police station, walk in, take photos and fingerprints. And for all of my clients who I send in, on a daily basis to get that done, I never before thought about, how impactful that really is.
Right.
And I minimized it, quite frankly. And so if there was ever a time where I became more humble than I ever have before, it was that very day when I was parking in the parking lot. And at the time, I remember my very close friend, Gary Girl, driving me there and saying, like, it's going to be fine. Like, you're going to be fine. And I walking in alone, handing over and I didn't hand over my driver's license. I handed over my law card.
Of course you did.
Yeah. Just to fuck with them. But yeah. Give them my law card and say, I'm here for fingerprints and photographs. And I'll never forget the guy behind the counter, like, laughing. And he's like, yeah, okay, who are you here to see? And I said, no, I'm here to get my photographs and fingerprints done. And he said, okay, hold on a second. And so lo and behold, like, all these people started coming to the front counter to see, like, what's going on. And I'm like looking around, is there going to be media? And thankfully there wasn't. But the whole experience in and of itself was so gut-wrenching as I'm standing there, still taking these photographs and getting my actual rolling of the fingers on the fingerprints done. And me thinking to myself, I can't believe that I'm living this right now. And I was determined to continue to practice, to clear my name. And I did do that.
What did it feel like? I mean, I knew because I was yielding the daily morning phone calls from you that were talking you down off the ledge morning after morning after morning. So, I remember what that was like, but it was 3 years of you fighting your own charges until you were finally vindicated in probably the least ceremonial fashion possible, to much of our disappointment. The Crown just realized they would never be able to make out the allegations and withdrew into the trial.
Yeah, there was no big apology and certainly no fireworks.
It was least the ceremonious way possible. But, during those 3 years, you continue running your practice as though these charges weren't happening. I mean, you continued going to court as required. You continued fighting, the good fight for clients who were still charged the same way they had been. Very few clients seemed to be affected by the fact that you had been charged. I don't think you lost more than, one or two that thought maybe a judge might think poorly of you, during that time. But for the most part, everyone knew that you were just this incredible lawyer that was going to do a good job no matter what nonsense you were facing in the background. But what did that feel like for you, knowing that you are going into a courtroom as the criminal defense lawyer facing your own allegations of criminality?
Yeah, so 30 months is a very long time, as we all know, and all of our clients know. I knew that if I stopped practicing, they had won. And my position was I had done absolutely nothing wrong, and it really would have been a disservice to my clients and to me, I think, and to my family, and the support and the love that everyone had given me all over the years to just sort of stay at home and pack up my practice. So I carried on. It was 30 months really of my own individual torture. But on the exterior, I continued to really portray myself as someone who was very, very strong, very confident, and would walk into a courtroom every day and continue to really represent my clients as effectively as I could. Behind the scenes, though, at home were the tears and the doubt and the self-doubt. And all the other things. And then I realized one day, I think it was about a year into the process, where I said, I gotta figure out something for myself. I got to start working out more. And then I started marathon training, which is a whole other issue that I should have never taken up because it nearly killed me. But it allowed me to focus on something else.
Right.
And that instead of coming home every night and worrying and, looking at my girls who were wondering, like, is she going to go to jail? Worrying about these things, I decided like I was going to find a hobby and I was going to find something to keep myself preoccupied. And so every time I have a client who's charged with something very serious, I always say to them, go find yourself a hobby. I don't care if it's knitting. Just go find something so that you can place your mind and your heart and your emphasis into something else other than worrying about these charges. And I really could only do that too because I knew I had a good legal team. And that legal team I knew would take care of me. But as a lawyer, as you know, you're so invested all the time that you can't just separate yourself from it. So I became very invested in my own file as well, and wanted my hands in it too. And my lawyer fortunately allowed me to do that, allowed me to be a part of the process. So all the clients that we have who want to be a part of the process that I say, back up and let me take care of it. I understand,
Right.
the mental anguish that goes into it. So it was a very tough 30 months. I'm trying to make it, a summary of it, but there were moments in the 30-month journey that I would say I wanted to jump off the ledge. And thankfully I had you and other family members who were there really to guide me and hold my hand through the process. But I don't want to sugarcoat it. It was torturous. It really was. And at the end of that 30-month process, there was no apology. There was no, we got this wrong. It was, yeah, I mean, maybe it's not the best case for us to prove, so we're gonna drop it. I was expecting more, and it didn't come. So it's unfortunate on that end, but for all the people who did support me, and there were many, like not just family and friends, but judges who quietly would contact me or see me in the hallway and hold my hand and say, "We're with you," or "I'm with you." But I'm sure there were others that probably still believe that I had done something wrong. And those people probably never change their mind, and that's okay.
Did you feel that from any judges during that 30 months while you were facing these allegations? Did you walk into courtrooms and feel that because of your charges, you were not being treated the same, you were not being treated fairly, your argument wasn't being considered the way that it ought to have been and would have been prior to you being charged?
I don't think so. I mean, I think every judge was pretty kind about it. I had heard rumors, that judges were buzzing about it at conferences or other places, but I don't think any of the judges that I appeared in front of were going to take it out on my client. I also began to go into protective mode. So if I was meeting with a judge or a client or a crown or anyone, I would always have a witness now. I would always bring a student or an associate now.
You still do that.
I still do that till this
That's
day.
you've never shook that.
Never.
I know.
Never.
And that's because of the
Yes.
charges that you face. You
Yeah.
won't have a single conversation with anyone unless it's either in writing by email or with a live witness there
Yeah.
to record everything.
I just won't do it. I
Yeah.
won't even have a judicial pretrial unless there is someone in the room or on the line. Just because I'm just nervous about this potentially happening again, and I need to protect myself. So I do that, and maybe it's an overreaction on my part, but so far it's worked for me.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt. That's
No,
for
that's
sure.
for sure.
That's for sure.
So no, it was a tough journey, but a journey that I think has really made me who I am today, and it made me see the system very differently because I think I was somewhat naive about the system. I knew there were always, issues with our system, but I think overall I believed in its integrity fundamentally. I think I still do because it obviously still worked for me. The system still worked the way that it should have. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of people feel you're going to get that apology or, the right will be wrong, the wrong will be righted or some way there would be, a clearing of your name. And when it doesn't come, it kind of hurts. But by the same token, there was no conviction. I didn't lose my license. I continue to practice. I still have my family. I still have the support of my friends. And I think people have to look at it that way.
Do you think it changed the way that you practice now? Because, I mean, you had a charmed life. You'd never been arrested before.
Yeah.
You never went through the system. There's a lot of lawyers who have grown up and like community housing, marginalized, racialized, and it helps them to better relate to their clients. As we know, I, had my crazy struggles as a teen. And I think, and I've always said, I think that is what helps inform the practice that I have and has made me the lawyer into who I am. Do you think that after, going through your own criminal charges, that the way that you relate to your clients change?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, listen, that whole process of going in and getting fingerprinted and photographed, I know we think it's like, such a nominal part of the process and it's so irrelevant, but it's a powerful part of the process that none of us really, certainly I didn't appreciate. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't in a holding cell. I didn't have to go to jail.
You've never been strip searched.
I've never been strip searched.
You don't know
I've
what the process is like. Yeah, until you've been squatting and coughing naked is a very different experience.
Yeah, no, I never had to do any of that. But going through the process for 30 months and paying for a lawyer and showing up and, sitting in a courtroom, behind the lawyer, not sitting at counsel table. Right. Yes, it is.
Being arraigned, having to plead guilty or not guilty.
Horrible. It's a horrible, horrible process. And I took it for granted initially when I began to practice. And only when I was charged did I actually appreciate how powerful of a process it really is. And that I always say the punishment is always in the process. And that continues to be my motto now. But now that I've gone through it, I can appreciate it. So yes, I think it has allowed me to connect with my clients. I think I'm more sympathetic. And at least I can appreciate what they're going through a little bit better. But again, with the life that I do have, I have an incredible support system that lots of people don't have.
Right.
So people who were talking me off the ledge, I now feel like I need to be that person for my clients, because oftentimes I have clients that don't have extended family and the love and the support of family members. So yeah, I feel like I owe that to my client now.
And in terms of your practice today, you're happy with it?
Well, you know the answer to that. I mean, I'm happy to service the clients that I have. I'm happy to take care of these people. I'm happy to be the voice of people. I mean, are there things about the system that I wish I could change from the bottom up? Yes, every single day. Are there frustrating days, irritating days where I just say, I'm done with this? I think it's almost daily that we have these calls over our morning coffee.
And it usually starts with, our job is so dumb.
I wish I was dog walking.
It isn't dumb, but it's the frustration of the administration, really. Not about the cases we have. I think we both cultivated practices that we're both very happy with. I know I love the areas of practice that I have. You've got fabulous cases and interesting legal issues to contend with. It's not even about that, but the system itself. When I started practicing criminal law, especially with my background, having been through the system twice myself, having seen other people experience it, I always thought it was broken. It was like, the system's broken and I'm going to help fix it. And I think it's working exactly as it was designed to work. I don't think it's actually broken. I just think it's wrong. I think that the entire approach is wrong. I think the way that we do criminal law in so many ways is so wrong.
I agree. I mean, listen, there are parts of the system that I do obviously enjoy, and I think our jury system does work. I do. I think it works, and I think it works well. I believe in this system. I do. But there are so many problems with it that I think could more easily be fixed if people took the time and the energy to actually fix them. So I agree with you. I think maybe by virtue of the fact that they haven't fixed it over the 25 years that I've been in practice, that maybe this is the system and it's designed to operate this way. But the level of frustration that I have on a daily basis, I think, has only increased year after year. And maybe that's because I have formed beautiful relationships with my clients, and I just feel so awful that they're going through this process that I think could be better managed and better dealt with. But yeah, or maybe it's just by virtue of people living their life and getting older and realizing, fuck, there are days I just really hate what I do. And maybe it's the same for everybody. I don't know. But for the most part, there are days where I love being an advocate. Whether it's being involved in criminal law or not, it's being an advocate and being someone's voice. I do love that. I love the feeling of that. But when it doesn't work the way I want it to, the frustration is just sometimes it really does get the better of me.
People always ask about, what's your win to loss ratio? I tell people I never, ever keep track. And if a lawyer says they win 100% of the cases, it means they're not prepared to take the difficult ones to trial. Have you ever won a case that you wish you hadn't?
Yes, just one. And it sticks out in my mind almost. I mean, every once in a while it pops back into my mind. I try not to remember the client's name. I
Okay.
remember it, but I try not to. And I was a young lawyer working under, the partners that I had at the time. I think I just had my first child. I hadn't had my second yet, and it was a sex assault. And it was an employer-employee relationship, and the allegation was it was a holiday party, and they were drinking and doing some drugs. And then the complainant alleged that her employer had sexually assaulted her behind a dumpster during the holiday party. They had gone outside for a cigarette together, and she alleges that this sex assault took place. She couldn't recall the details of the sex assault, and too intoxicated or overly intoxicated, but she recalls being in the bathroom of the workplace where she was bleeding, and she had flashbacks of this sex assault. And when she came to court and she began to expressly indicate, what she could recall, it was very wishy-washy.
Okay. And is this trial just in front of a judge, or this is
No,
with the
it's
jury?
in front of a jury.
Okay.
And when I first met the client, he came in with his wife. He was tearful. She was tearful. Young couple, had no criminal record, no criminal antecedents, was otherwise a very law-abiding citizen, had a good job. And his position was, I never touched her. I don't even know why she has my name on her tongue. I never touched her. We are employer-employee, but I never touched her, and she has mental health issues.
Okay.
So when I read the statement, I could at least get to a place where I could understand what he was saying. And so I realized that in the DNA folder of my case, because I was a young lawyer and someone else had organized the file, but when I got to the DNA folder, there was a profile. And for your viewers who may or may not know this, when they actually generate or when they assess or test the DNA that is inside of the woman.
And in layman's terms, this is like a rape kit.
A rape kit, right. Exactly. So it came back as there was a profile. In other words, there is a sample that they could compare it to. So if they had a male, they could compare the two samples to find out if it was a match.
Same person.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't do that. Why they didn't seek that, I don't know. I think it's maybe how it was drafted. It was drafted very poorly to suggest that maybe there wasn't a profile. And you had to sort of dig deep into the file to realize there was a profile. So anyway, fast forward, I bring the client in with his wife, and I say, okay, well, if you are innocent, we have the best tool to exonerate you because they have a profile. And so we could get you privately tested.
And is this before the trial starts?
This is just before. So it was like on the heels, maybe a week before.
Okay.
And I discovered it pretty late too, in fairness to the Crown Attorney. So he comes in and I say, let's get this done. We've got a private, clinic. You can go there, do a swab, and they can see if there's a match. And if there isn't, Bob's your uncle. We'll go to court and you'll be exonerated and we'll have a party.
Right.
And he says, done. And I say, fabulous. Okay. So he goes to the clinic, he gets it done, and I'm waiting for this sample to come. I call the clinic and they say, listen, we're on a backlog. Like, we'll get it to you when we get it to you. So I forget about it. I'm in the middle of this trial. I'm a young lawyer. I want to get this show on the road. So we get going.
And for our viewers, changing trial dates, especially in Superior Court with a jury, is not an easy feat, especially if you don't necessarily want to alert the Crown to the fact that you're having this DNA testing done just in case something goes awry.
Right. But I wasn't thinking that
You're
because
worried.
He was so adamant.
Right.
And, looking me in the eye and saying, I'm telling you, this never happened in front of his wife, and you got to clear my name. And okay, this is the easiest way. Anyway, trial starts. She gets into the complainant gets into the stand. I've cross-examined her. I think it was about 2.5 days of cross-examination, like a grueling cross. And at the end of it, it was pretty obvious that she had no idea what happened. She had these flashbacks. It was coming to her in memories and images, in these like really weird images, and she just couldn't articulate what happened. And so it was kind of hard to believe what she was saying. It was. But he wanted to testify. He didn't have to, but he wanted to testify because he wanted to clear his name. So he gets into the box. We're about, I don't know, mostly through his examination in chief, where at the point where the Crown is going to take over the reins and she's now going to cross. And I go back to the office and I get the DNA profile back. And it's him. It's like 1 in 3 trillion.
Wow.
It's
him.
A
match beyond, I mean,
beyond any imagination.
There's only 7 billion people in the world. So if it's a match of 1 in 3 trillion,
it's him.
It's him.
Yeah. So I bring him in and I say, please don't bring your wife. Just come in on your own. We need to talk trial strategy. And I bring him in and I sit him down and I say, hello, this is you.
Right.
And he begins to cry and says, my wife was in the room and I could say what happened, but, it was consensual and she's remembering it improperly. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, you're about to be cross-examined now about this. You cannot lie. I can't assist you in that. You're going to have to be very careful. Now, in fairness to him, the Crown didn't ever think it was consensual, so didn't actually attack him that way.
Right.
And so he was able to navigate it very carefully. But in fairness, I was concerned, like, do I get off the record? Do I not? What are my obligations? Like, we researched all of that before we carried on.
And how junior were you? Like, how
I
long
was young. I was a really young lawyer, maybe 6 years out. I was young. And, I reported to my principals, like, what do I do here? And they said, you're so far down the road now, you can't leave him. And at this point, I'm not his, the judge upstairs. He'll have to obviously pay whoever, the piper later on. But the jury had to obviously be charged, and they were, and they came back, I think it was a couple hours later, and acquitted him. And I get back to the office with this massive, rose bouquet from him. And I'll still remember it in my mind. My principal took the rose bouquet, dumped it in the garbage and said, like, we're done with this guy. Don't take his calls. Don't take anything. It wasn't so much that he lied. It's that he lied to his lawyer. Right? Like, I am not.
You get that a lot.
I'm sure.
We get that a lot. Sure. Oh my God. Everybody sits across me. I swear, miss, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And then 6 months later, we get the DNA, we get the video surveillance because everyone's on video surveillance, or we get their own fucking phone records in which there's text messages that are exactly confirming what they promised they didn't do. And so, I'm at a point now where I tell people, like, don't tell me you didn't do it.
Anything. Yeah.
I don't care. Like, I'll represent you the same. It doesn't matter to me if you did it, didn't do it.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I don't represent people on sex offenses at all. So it's easier for me to reconcile when it's, drugs and guns. And I don't care if it's your gun. I don't care if it's your drugs. It's it's not the same, but
no, but it was powerful because I was coming down the escalator packing up at 361 University, and there was a juror waiting at the bottom of the staircase. And as you know, we're not allowed to speak to them. Right. So I always put my hand up because I recognized her right away. And I said, I can't talk to you about the case. And she said, well, I just want to tell you, like, nobody. I was like, no. But, she was about to say no one believed her. And I thought, stop talking.
Right.
Number one. And number two.
Because you knew that she was telling the truth somehow, some way, in whatever she was cobbling together.
Now, could it have been consensual? Maybe. And again, she was, sort of out to lunch. But, the fact that the DNA came back and the profile was a match, like, it sat with me, and it sat with me for months. And it sat with me because he sat in the room with me as a young lawyer, saying, like, crying, saying it wasn't me. And I never touched her. And, the truth is, if it was consensual, then I would have run a consensual defense.
Right.
But it was being in a position where I was already so far down the line and I'd run this defense that I really couldn't do an about face. I was kind of stuck. But yeah, it was the only case that I thought, ew, like, I just felt icky about the whole thing, but it's also what we do. Like, I mean, we represent people who oftentimes make really bad judgment calls. And then we also represent people who, are not always honest with their lawyers and their loved ones and the people around them for various reasons, and whatever those reasons are. And that's why I say, like, let someone else, I guess, judge you, now that you've been acquitted. And hopefully he's, being very good to his wife and is staying out of trouble. I had never heard from him again after that. So I'm hoping that he is, being a really upstanding citizen.
Wow. So of all the cases you've done, that's the one win you wish you hadn't won.
Yeah. I think that's the one win, definitely, that I wish I hadn't won.
What's your best win? What's the win that you take with you as sort of the highlight of your 25-year career?
My favorite.
Your favorite win, the best case, the one, I mean, I know what it is. I know what you're going to say, but people listening to this don't. And it's just such a great fucking win.
I hope he's listening.
I'm sure he is.
I hope he is, because
he knows who he is.
He knows who he is. He will be with me forever. I'm going to start to get emotional.
It's so funny because we practiced in the same chambers now for 10 years. You've always had your own firm. I've always had my own firm. We've always kept things separate, although we've done many cases together. Yeah. But even when we don't do a case together, when it's, a big case or a heavy legal issue, we'll often go to each other for like feedback and advice. You and I always see things slightly differently, but always are on the same page, which is like a fabulous way to practice. And so I felt like I was doing this case with you, even though I wasn't. I felt like every single day was like a new issue, a new problem, a new piece of evidence where it was like, fuck, George, to the point where it was, I felt like I was in the case. And if I was ever in the courthouse when that case was going on, I was sitting with the family too. I became like a part of the family.
Totally.
I was there the day that your client was exonerated and in the parking lot with him, cutting off his ankle monitor together. Like, I just felt like I lived this case with you, and it was such a good win.
Oh, I took him on like a family member. Yeah. He was a young man. I'd represented him previously on a very poochy drug possession case. It was poochy. And they had, like most of our clients, take their cell phones, seize the drugs, seize the money, and case is going along. And then all of a sudden they do an about face one day and they say they're withdrawing the charges. I thought, wow, that was easy. I didn't really have to do very much. Not sure what happened here.
Great.
But okay, fantastic. And lo and behold, little did I know that while this was going on, they had taken his cell phone, gone through it, and were trying to actually charge him with not just one murder, but 2 murders and an attempt murder.
So, not just any murder.
Not just any murder.
This boy with no criminal record, very little criminal record.
No criminal record
with the execution of one of Canada's most infamous mobsters.
Yeah.
Like, he went from 0 to 200
yes, absolutely.
in like 3.2 seconds.
Yes.
Like, it was
like the day
crazy.
That I went to go see him in custody, he was a brown boy and he was pale white. He had no idea what was going on. And he was looking at me with his big, beautiful brown eyes and saying, I don't understand what is happening. And he was welling up with tears. And I'm looking at him and it's making no sense whatsoever. He's not only charged with that murder, but he's charged with the murder of a beautiful young woman. So one case in Hamilton.
Who made the mistake of dating a mobster.
She did.
To be clear. She put herself in the line of fire just a little. It happens.
She did.
Not an innocent bystander. Innocent young girl that didn't deserve what she got.
Absolutely.
buyer beware.
Yeah, tragically,
Yeah.
she was with this individual, and always is the case. She's the one that ends up in the morgue, and he ends up carrying on with his life, the
Yes.
boyfriend, that is.
Yes.
And my poor young client is charged with this, and I'm now left to sort of figure out how and why and
Right.
where and how
Right.
did this all happen. And it was a 30-month ordeal trying to get this guy exonerated, and not just exonerated, but just to get him bail.
I think you set a record for the number of times you brought
A
his
bail application.
case for bail into the Court of Appeal.
Nine
Nine
judges.
No less.
9 judges.
Just at the Court of Appeal.
Just at the Court of Appeal.
I know.
9 Court of Appeal judges. It got to a point where one of the Court of Appeal judges said to me, I don't think there are any more judges for you to blow through. So go back to the first judge.
Well, and it was you, and you would get him out, and then the Crown would bring an application to put him back into jail. Like it was
a journey.
It was a fucking tennis match of bail hearings. On and on and on through every level of court this province has to offer. It was crazy.
It was crazy.
And then
I
the
couldn't
preliminary hearing comes, and you bring, I think, an application to have the Crown attorney removed.
I did. Yes. So there were strange things that happened there. I could probably write a book about this case.
For sure.
But strange things were going on because I think they realized their case was not as strong as they once believed it to be. And they were having some trouble connecting him to the actual crime. Now, in fairness, he was friends with someone who was certainly potentially connected to the crime. And I think they were trying to loosely use that, but they were trying to double down and thus drove out to the jail to kind of meet with a witness who was not the most credible witness to begin with, to try to get him on their side and nurse him along with the evidence. And once I found that out, I wanted the Crown kicked. So that caused, more litigation, more media. And at the end of the day, I just wanted this boy home to his family, and I wanted his life back. And he was the most sincere, respectful, loving individual. He still is. He sees me every year. He comes on his anniversary. He always brings me the same bottle of wine, and it's a red bottle of wine, and it's called The Prisoner. And he does it every year. It's his way and his sign of appreciation for me. But the day that they finally agreed to withdraw these charges was one of the most incredible moments of my career. Like, tearful, emotional. I mean, I think my whole office erupted in cheers. We were beside ourselves.
I think we went up for like a celebratory dinner.
We did. We had a celebratory dinner. We had drinks. We were.
I don't think we partied that hard since Forcillo was convicted.
Yeah.
I think that's the last time we had quite the same sort of.
Are we allowed to say that?
I think we're allowed to say that.
Okay,
oh yeah, we threw a party when Forcillo was
we did throw
convicted because they never got convicted back then.
Yeah. So no, I mean, listen, this boy is now a man and has a child and is about to get married and has this incredible life now out in Alberta. And, he's never forgotten what I did for him, and his family has never forgotten, and they are always appreciative. And as I tell you every day, I find this job to be more often than not quite thankless, is that we take people on journeys that are sometimes 30 months long, and then they walk out of our lives just as easily as they walked into them, and we never see them again.
Yes, or hear from them, unless they get arrested.
Unless they're rearrested.
And then we get the call from the police, and it's like, oh, you didn't have to get arrested to call me. You could have just made that phone call. But,
But so he calls often,
right,
to check in and to let me know how he's doing, and as a constant reminder, he tells me how appreciative that he is and was at the time and continues to be. So it is one of the most incredible moments of my career. I don't think I'll be able to top it again. No amount of acquittals on homicides, and I've had them, will ever be as satisfying as getting him back onto his life, which was just horribly interrupted unnecessarily in the most tragic of ways. He was also, as you know, we got him to have his time in custody not spent in Hamilton, but at a very, very small jail out in Stratford, because we were worried about his safety because he was charged with, killing one of these mobsters. So, he fortunately was in a place where he was safe, but he was far removed from his family, who were working hard and traveling to see him. And it was such a toll on the family as well. that I never forget it. I'll never forget the moments of that trial and that proceedings. Like I'll never ever forget it ever. So,
is there anything in this career that you haven't done yet and want to do? Like on a forward-thinking basis,
yeah.
You've done so much. You took on the fight of medical marijuana back in the day. That was like your shtick.
Yeah.
You've won sort of every type of case.
Yeah.
Is there anything you haven't done that you feel like you would need to before you open up your dog walking center and leave criminal defense for good?
I've never actually appeared on my feet and made oral submissions in the Supreme Court of Canada.
Okay.
I never have. I've done things in
and do you
writing.
Want to? You don't really do appeals much.
I know, but it's one of those things that I really want to do.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So anyone out there who needs me to go to the Supreme Court of Canada.
Anyone who needs a lawyer on a really great issue for the Supreme Court of Canada should contact you. If they want to contact you, aside from just Googling, how do they find you? Got a website?
Got a website. Yeah.
What is it?
Key in www.leorashemesh.com. Yeah. And
not much on social media, but
no.
We can find you.
You can find me.
Yes.
But no, that's the only thing that I haven't done that I kind of wish that I had done or have the ability to do. And maybe I wouldn't be great at it, but I'd still like to do it. That's the only thing I think left for me to do. Yeah. Yeah. You?
I have no desire to do appeals.
Okay.
I really don't. I feel like I have the exact practice I've always wanted. I'm limited. As you know, I only take homicides, drug cases, firearm cases. I'd like to change the law, but the way that we do law. And I don't think that that's something that happens in court.
No.
I think it has to happen on a policy basis. Mm-hmm. Most often I'm talking with people now who want to speak to me about recidivism and why do we keep letting these criminals back out on bail, and why do these criminals keep coming out onto the street? And it's like, because that's how the system is designed. The system is designed to keep people coming back for, I think, financial reasons. I think the criminal justice system is an economic system. And so we don't have a system of rehabilitation that actually works. We don't have a system of reintegration that actually works.
That I agree with.
I've said for a long time, imagine it costs approximately $100,000 to keep an inmate in the federal institutions per year, roughly. Changes province to province, but I think the average across this country is $100,000. Imagine we put $100,000 into the social resources of every person in this country who is under the age of 12. So before they can even get arrested, they stood a chance by way of education, training, ending intergenerational trauma, helping marginalized youth, all of the social problems that we in our profession know lead people to enter the criminal justice system at the age of 12 to 15. If we took that same money that we spend on their incarceration and put it to the front end of their life, we would not have to spend a penny more than we already do to keep them incarcerated, and we'd probably keep a significant number of them out of the system to begin with.
Yeah.
And we just don't do that.
Yeah.
People don't think about that. And, when you start breaking it down to people who aren't a part of this system, they're awestruck at the notion of, wow, we wouldn't have to spend more money. It's not just about putting quote unquote criminals on the street. It's about giving people the opportunities that, people from affluent neighborhoods already enjoy.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I agree with you. I mean, listen, policy changes comes with better leadership.
Absolutely.
So hopefully once there's a changing of the guard, there'll be some changes in policy and leadership as well, without getting too political.
For sure. I mean, I think we also have to educate the masses who are not a part of this world.
Oh, I agree.
Those of us in the system know, but there's so few and far, right? We're a small slice of the general population. The general population just reads what they see in the media, which is, all these kids with guns. And but why the fuck do we have 14-year-olds walking around with guns who feel that they're so unsafe in their world that they need a gun? Then
Well,
we
I
have to
also-
turn the table on like the world that they live in.
Oh, I agree. But I also think people don't necessarily understand how the bail system works
Agreed.
and how hard it actually is to get bail for certain offenders. So I think this whole lock them up, throw away the key kind of attitude, really people don't have very good insight into how the system actually works.
But I think those people also think that in prison they're getting treatment and they're getting
Oh.
counseling and they get a rehab. Like the amount of times that I've spoken to people and suggested that prison in Canada is arguably the most dangerous, violent environment that exists in this
Absolutely.
country. They're awestruck by it, but
Yeah.
that's the reality. So you take a kid that's like 20 years old, you send him to the pen
Yeah.
with
It's honing
lifers.
his skills.
Well, it's honing his skills, but you're also traumatizing him to the point that
Absolutely.
you cannot properly function in the society that they want them functioning.
Mhm.
And they're not coming out with job skills and they're not coming out with, better education and they're not coming out having addressed those underlying issues that brought them into the system to begin
Oh,
with.
of course.
So, we know that most people don't. And I think that, you and I and the greater sort of criminal justice system participants need to do a better job of educating the general public of what's actually happening out there if they truly want change.
I agree.
I don't think they truly want change. I think
Neither
the
do I.
system is built to keep people stuck inside and coming back inside. I think
Yeah,
it's
unless you're
created
part
like
of the
this.
system or you're part of some arm of the system, whether it's rehabilitation programs or probation or parole or corrections, you really don't have a deep understanding of how
No.
the system works. But I also think you might not necessarily care to know how the system.
I think more people care.
You think they do too.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
as
because
they
their cars
keep
get
losing their Jeep Range Rovers.
Then they
and
care.
and no joke, their houses keep getting broken into, and they're like, "Why the fuck are these kids breaking into my house?" Okay, well, let's take a look at why.
Absolutely.
And once we start breaking down the why, there's that better understanding, and hopefully a catalyst for change, so that we can
Absolutely.
all safely drive our cars without getting worried about getting jacked.
Right, but that's
Yes.
when people started asking those
course.
tough questions, right? Prior to that, though, if it didn't affect you,
No,
or didn't have any
That's
effect
like
on
anything.
people around you, then you would close your eyes to it and say those are those people, right? Until you have a loved one who's actually, charged or arrested, you
Yes.
really don't take a very deep interest in what's happening in the criminal justice system because you don't think it has any bearing on your life, right? So I get it. I do understand it. I think that's just the way the world works.
well, maybe we'll change it.
Maybe.
Lee, thank you for being on the
All right,
show.
love you so much.
So
Thank
much
you.
fun.
Thank
I
you.
do think you have such an interesting story that rarely gets covered for obvious reasons,
For
but
obvious
it's
reasons.
like, I think it helps changes the way that people will judge.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.